I got to tell you the truth. I don't need another pharmaceutical television commercial. No offense to the way you guys make money, but someone will buy those TV ads. But I got to tell you the truth. Is there a man over 60 in America who needs like another Cialis commercial? Like, we get it. We know it's available. It's all good, right? I mean, so American people look at that and they say, well, you're wasting your money on that.
GOP presidential candidate Christie blasted pharmaceutical companies for, spending an astronomical amount of money on advertising. The former New Jersey governor got pretty worked up as a CNBC host asked about what the role of government could be in making medications more affordable for those who need them. So get a load of the framing of her question here. Let's watch.
Ask you about negotiations with the drug companies, with the government. That starts September 1st is when the negotiation's supposed to start. We had Merck CEO on earlier this morning talking about earnings, but talking about this too. He says, look, it's not a negotiation, it's price fixing, but you do have Americans paying more than any other nation for their drugs that they are getting. We're paying for the innovation of the world. You don't want to see the innovation cut off, but how do you deal with making sure that Americans aren't getting squeezed by it?
Well, how about if the politicians really dealt with what are the cost drivers in this system, right? You do not hear any politician come on this air and talk about the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers. They are taking from anywhere from 50 to 70% of the rebates that pharmaceutical companies mean to go to the customer, and they're taking them purely to be middlemen. It's not sexy, Becky.
Why don't the drug companies just cut the list price then and cut out the need for a middleman in the whole thing?
Well, I think they're going to need help from the government to be able to do that.
Okay, I just love this line of thinking coming from the CNBC host. How could Congress allow Medicare to negotiate the prices of a handful of drugs? Okay, also let's pause for a second because she just regurgitated what the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, Merck, said during a earnings call with shareholders, where he allegedly said that it's not negotiating prices, it's price fixing. What? How is it price fix? Price fixing would be the government coming in and passing legislation indicating that Merck is not allowed to sell this drug for any more than this much money per dose, period, end of story. There is no negotiation. But look, CNBC is all about like informing people about where to invest their money in the stock market. And so they're concerned that, allowing the Medicare system to negotiate drug prices on behalf of their patients, on behalf of their Medicare recipients is, it's gonna cut into their profits. And shareholders are concerned about that. And that's why pharmaceutical companies are fighting tooth and nail to do away with the watered down version of what the Biden administration allegedly wanted to pass in the first place, okay? What will be left over for these poor cash-strapped drug companies, I'm so sad about these poor pharmaceutical companies having their profits sacrificed allegedly by allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. What CNBC is whining about here is, again, the watered down Build Back Better agenda that Democrats passed a few years ago. While the initial goal was to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices, all drug prices, the end result of that provision in the Inflation Reduction Act was nothing close to its original iteration. According to Kaiser Family Foundation, under the new Medicare drug price negotiation program, the number of drugs subject to price negotiation will be limited to 10 Part D drugs for 2026, 3 years from now. Another 15 Part D drugs for 2027, another 15 Part D and Part B drugs for 2028, and another 20 Part D and Part B drugs for 2029 and later years if, and it's a big if, Republicans don't overturn that law, which they most certainly will if they gain enough power to do so, because I'm telling you, pharmaceutical companies have already launched a full-blown attack on this law. Now remember, this will only impact Medicare recipients, and it does not cover all drugs. Also keep in mind that Big Pharma is working overtime to reverse the law, and they seem to have plenty of time since, again, it won't even go into effect for another 3 years. And when it comes to innovation, because she seems to be so concerned about that, let's not forget that American taxpayers foot the bill for research and development. Funding from the National Institutes of Health, NIH, was contributed to 354 of 356 drugs approved from 2010 to 2019, totaling $187 billion, billion with a B. Where do you think the NIH gets that money from? Us. So this idea that we need to help pharmaceutical companies maximize their profits in the name of innovation is hilarious when we're funding their research and development. And then they turn around and price gouge us while their minions on corporate media regurgitate lies to provide cover for them. In fact, let's give credit where credit is due, because Christie went on to note that Big Pharma could make better use of their profits by, investing more of their resources in developing treatments and innovating.
What the pharmaceutical companies, and I've told them this, should be talking about much more is their innovation and the fact that, by the way, Americans get access to the greatest medicines first. And part of the reason for that is the investment that our companies make in research and development
here. I don't
here.
want to kill the innovation. Trust me, I don't want to kill the innovation.
And so,
but it's broken. I mean, Ken Frazier at one point talked about how he tried to take this on when he was CEO, and he couldn't just do the list prices. There's an entire system set up that ends it.
And that's what I mean. It's look, you can't just do it that way. And nobody in the political world has wanted to take on the PBMs. Nobody's wanted to do it. And we did it in New Jersey. We're the first state that wound up doing a reverse auction for those managers. We cut our costs, Becky, just for state workers, $500 million a year by doing a reverse auction. If the government started to get involved in making sure that everybody in this system was treated fairly, we could reduce those prices without price fixing that will lead to a reduction in innovation.
No one is having a conversation about price fixing. No one. What are we talking about? Like, it is amazing to me that literally what they're complaining about is allowing for Medicare to negotiate for lower drug prices. Do you know how the negotiation works? Okay, one party has an opening offer, the other party says, no, here's where I'm willing to meet you. They go back and forth and eventually reach an agreement. That is what a negotiation is, which is different from the government price fixing things. Look, so let's go back to the advertising. How much do pharmaceutical companies spend on advertising? Let's take a look at the numbers from last year alone. Pharma companies forked out just under $8.1 billion on ad campaigns in 2021. And if you look at the numbers from previous years, you'll notice that the amount of money drug companies spend on advertising just keeps increasing year after year. These poor cash-strapped pharmaceutical companies, what could they do? According to a study published by JAMA earlier this year, researchers estimate that Pharma spent $6 billion on direct-to-consumer ads in 2016. And that figure grew significantly from 1996, when consumer ads budgeted $1.3 billion. Now, promotional spending for prescription drugs varied wildly, the researchers said, with a median spend of $20.9 million per drug and a median of 13.5% of the promotional budget allocated to direct-to-consumer ads. I mean, they don't have the money for research and development. They don't have money for the innovations, but they sure do spend a lot of money advertising their penis pills to people watching CNN in the morning. Other findings from this study also determined that pharma companies tend to spend more money advertising drugs that have less health benefits for patients. In fact, Forbes reported that the proportion of advertising spending allocated to direct-to-consumer ads was an average of 14.3 percentage points higher for drugs with a low added benefit compared to those with a high added benefit, according to the peer-reviewed analysis of the 150 best-selling branded prescription drugs in 2020. Manufacturers of the top 6 best-selling drugs spent the bulk of their promotional budgets, more than 90%, targeting consumers directly rather than clinicians for a range of treatment options for conditions including HIV, multiple sclerosis, and numerous cancers. Meanwhile, drugs that treat metabolic issues and digestive tract problems received a substantially low share of direct-to-consumer advertising compared to overall promotional budgets, according to the researchers in that study. So why are the pharma companies doing all this? Well, the findings could suggest pharma firms are aiming promotional dollars directly toward consumers rather than clinicians as part of a strategy to drive patient demand for drugs that clinicians would be less likely to prescribe. And that's according to the study's lead author, Michael DiStefano, a researcher at Johns Hopkins. Now, most countries don't even allow drug companies to market their products directly to consumers. The United States and New Zealand are the only two in the world that do. Now, the World Health Organization believes direct-to-consumer marketing influences both patients and their doctors. And these ads make it harder to essentially make decisions based on evidence, what's actually best for the patient, what's right for the patient. These ads put ideas in people's heads and they think that they need to take pharmaceutical drugs in order to alleviate whatever perceived ailment they have. In addition, the American Medical Association opposes the practice and alongside other health organizations is actually pushing to outlaw it in the United States. Pharmaceutical firms laughably claim patients benefit from these commercials and that they have a right to know what options are available to them. I'd argue that they should get the appropriate info on options from their doctors, not a cheesy pharma ad while watching Vanderpump Rules on Bravo. But we'll see where that attempt to outlaw these direct-to-consumer advertisements go. But I just really want to reiterate, when they're able to spend millions of dollars on advertising every year for each drug, they've got the resources for innovation. So the next time you hear some corporate puppet argue that we can't negotiate lower drug prices because they're not gonna have the resources for innovation, I would flip them the bird because they're lying to you and they're insulting your intelligence.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.